So starting a new unit here on the Federal Reserve and banking. And with that, we start with this first lesson on the meaning, function, and kinds of money. And so we begin with a question of what is money, which seems like a pretty silly question to ask. But money is a set of assets in the economy that people are regularly used to buy goods and services from other people. Now notice in this definition here, money is just the set of assets in an economy. It doesn't say that money is cash or anything else. So what this means is money includes only those few types of wealth that are exchanged between buyers and sellers for goods and services. Money does not have to be cash. You know, when you look at the different types of currencies, all those are representations. Essentially, these are a set of assets that people use to buy goods and services. They represent something else. Money only needs to be an agreed upon asset. And for example, it's just used to conduct trade and market. So what we have to understand immediately, of course, is that with money, all we're doing is talking about this is an agreed upon asset of which we can determine the interactions that take place using that asset. And it doesn't have to be paper currency, it doesn't have to be coins, it can be literally anything. But money has three functions in the economy. And it is these functions which distinguish money from stocks, bonds, or any other form of wealth. Money is a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and a store of value. So as a medium of exchange, we're talking about an item that buyers give to sellers when they want to purchase goods and services. So it's a medium of exchange. It's what we use to buy goods. And a medium of exchange is anything that is readily acceptable as payment. For example, in prison, you see cigarettes being used as money. I mean, that's a medium of exchange. It's a readily acceptable use of payment. So when we're talking about these different types of currencies and cash and checks and credit cards and gift cards, all four of these are simply a medium of exchange. All they really are is a readily acceptable payment for a good or service. So our next is money as a unit of account. So a unit of account is the yardstick which people use to post prices and record debt. So money is a measurement. It's a form of measurement, just like a foot or an inch or anything else. So when we're talking about $10, what that equals really is a price tag. It tells us, it's a measurement. How much of these is it going to take to equal $399.99? In other words, money is simply what we use to say here's what the price is. So it's our measurement tool. So when we look at these different prices on laptops, really all we're doing is we're looking at these prices, and basically from that perspective we're determining which one is more valuable. And that value, of course, is based on how much it's priced at, which when we talk about that price, really it's a measurement. So it's just used to measure the value here and to post these prices. So that leads us into our third function of money, which is as a store of value. So a store of value is an item that people can use to transfer purchasing power from the present to the future. So in other words, it's something that we can save, and then in the future it becomes purchasing power. In other words, wealth is used to refer to the total of all stores of value, including both monetary and non-monetary assets. So when we talk about how much wealth you have, it's monetary and non-monetary. And when converting an asset into a medium of exchange, the term liquidity is used. In other words, as a store of value, your home is a store of value because you can buy it now and sell it 20 years from now, and you've got that money back. In other words, it's been liquefied. It's now becomes purchasing power again. So liquidity describes the ease with which an asset can be converted. So when we look at the scale of liquidity, you can kind of think about it like this. On one end, we have cash, which is extremely liquid, of course. CDs, which are very, very liquid because it's basically after a set amount of time, could be anywhere between 6 months, 12 months, 36 months, and then we get the money back plus interest. Rare coins, jewelry, artwork, housing, these are all things that can be liquid, that can be converted into purchasing power for cash. And as you go up this list, it becomes more and more difficult. Because the first two are very, very easy because there's a set value with price. But rare coins, can be negotiated. Jewelry, paintings, housing, all of those are negotiated scales of value. And the more negotiation it takes, the less liquid something becomes. So when we're looking at housing, housing is the least liquid form of wealth because it's so difficult in order to actually get rid of your house in most cases. And when you do so, of course, you're doing so usually at a negotiated value. So the third thing we want to look at are kinds of money. So normally you would think that money is just money, it's what we see every day, but that's not actually true. There are in fact several types of money that economists look at. The first of which is commodity money, then representative money, and then what we call fiat money. So from a commodity money standpoint, we begin with this idea of the barter system. So before there was any type of established currency, there was a barter system which was used to trade goods for others. And in this system, traders essentially negotiated to determine an equal value of goods they were trading. So for example, you might have X number of bale of hay is equal to 1 cow. And so we're trading cows for bales of hay. And so in a commodity system, though, the commodity itself is treated as the currency. So maybe the bales of hay are the actual currency for buying anything, not just trading for cows, but for anything within the system. And so rather than negotiate the trade of two items, one item will be bought using another. That would be the cigarettes in prison are used as currency. So they're not traded, they're actually buying goods with cigarettes. So say the price of a barrel of fish is a pound of pepper. Well, in order for you to get a barrel of fish, you have to pay a pound of pepper. So the pepper in this case, that is the actual currency. And so that's how this commodity system works. It's based on the original barter system, but all it does is it takes one item that is commonly found within society and uses that item as the currency to purchase all other goods. So our second type of money we want to look at is representative money. It's money that consists of physical tokens that can be exchanged for a fixed commodity. So in other words, at this point, we're taking one thing and we're using it to represent the other. So if we were talking about our fish in a barrel being paid for with pepper, instead of hauling around a pound of pepper, you would have a note that said that you owned a pound of pepper. So for example, a banknote for 1 pound of gold. And this is the most common form of representative money we would see. It is using paper money that says this is how much that note's worth. The banknote itself is only representative of the value of gold. Its value is entirely based on it saying how much gold you actually had control of. The note itself in terms of value has nothing. It's just worthless. Many countries at one time used currency backed by the gold standard. It was pretty common that that's how everything worked. The problem with maintaining it on the gold standard is that every country had a set amount of gold that they were able to access. We got to remember gold is a non-renewable resource, so there's an exact amount of gold on the planet. So whoever had the most gold had the largest money supply. So if you took 10 countries and one country only held 1% of the gold, well then the amount of money that they could supply was very small, and thus their economy would find it very, very difficult to grow. In fact, one of the reasons why the American economy grew so much in the late 19th century is because of the California gold rush. The discovery of gold in California and then the discovery of silver in Nevada and these different discoveries, it allowed the United States government to significantly increase the supply of money and thus increase its spending because now they could print more money. The nation's money supply was fixed by the amount of gold held in reserve. So however much gold you held was how much money you could actually put into the economy. So from an inflation perspective, looking at price levels, when the nations are on representative money and using gold, what they're essentially doing is they're limiting the effects of inflation because price levels aren't going to rise all that much and they won't fall all that much because they're dependent on how much gold you own. So if the United States was discovered gold or bought more gold, then their reserves would increase and thus the money supply would increase. If the U.S. decided to sell gold, then the result would be a deflation in the currency. But what made the discovery of gold in California so significant was the fact that it brought in so much gold into the U.S. reserves, but that it allowed the country to expand its money stock. It allowed the country to inflate its currency. And so in August of 1971, though, the United States abandoned the gold standard under President Nixon, and its reason was very simple. The government at the time, they did not want the money supply to be fixed by the amount of gold in reserve. And one of the reasons why you can understand is because there isn't an exact amount of gold on this planet. So if you expand forward, then what you realize, of course, is at some point, everybody's economy is going to be fixed at a stopping point of how much money supply they have just based on the amount of gold. By removing the country off the gold standard, it allowed the government to print more money, to inflate the currency. So it removed restrictions on the amount of currency in the economy. Now we can chart this out because we can look at it, and if you look at prices over time, what you'll notice is they're relatively stable from a CPI perspective, starting under 15 into 30. And then, of course, if you look at right there at the end of 1970, we're still talking about price levels that haven't reached 45. Today, it's 237. And it's so if you look what happens, of course, after 1971, you get an idea really quickly how fast CPI has risen since 71. And that's because the amount of money we had held had increased significantly. So we moved away from representative money and moved into the next kind of money, which is fiat money. Do this. Okay, so fiat money. It's money without intrinsic value. It's used because of government decree and draws its value from the government. Fiat money isn't backed by anything. Whereas you talk about banknotes and coins from the Federal Reserve, they're not backed by gold. They're not backed by silver. They're not backed by anything other than the promise of a strong economy and strong government. If the economy is weak, or if the government is seen as weak, the value of the dollar falls. If it's seen as strong, the economy is strong, the value of the dollar rises. Now, one of the things we notice, of course, after 1971 is we see a significant increase in price levels, but we also see a significant increase in the fluctuation of price levels. Fiat money is much more volatile because of the fact that it's not backed by anything in terms of an exact amount, a fixed commodity. Rather, it's backed simply by the decree of the government. So since 1971, with the United States economy, it's fluctuated far more significantly because of the fact that the value of the dollar rises and falls, and price levels rise and fall much more frequently. And it differs from representative money. Fiat money is decreed from a government. Representative money could come from a bank without government involvement. Under a representative money, when you're using that, the bank simply issues banknotes based on the amount of money you have and you own or you've deposited. So if you deposited 20 pounds in gold, then they would give you a gold note. They would give you a gold note, representative of that amount of gold, of how much it was valued. Fiat money, on the other hand, is only printed by the government. Counterfeiting is illegal because of the fact that they're trying to control the amount of money there is based on those inflation rates. But they're printing money, and the value of that money is simply based on the value of our economy. So when our economy goes into our recession, then it's understandable you see that the value of the dollar decreases. So fiat money itself has no intrinsic value. So when you look at how money is used and you look at the kinds of money, so in America and in a lot of countries, we're using a fiat money. We're using a banknote that's simply a promise that it's going to be fulfilled, that the government has the ability to fulfill that, and it's strong based on the strength of the government, the strength of the economy. So when it's weak, when the dollar falls, you got a pretty good example of what's happening within the economy as well.